Hi, welcome to the Your Voice Here podcast. This podcast is all about taking a fun and inspiring look at people's journeys into podcasting, radio presenting, being a voiceover artist, or whatever they're looking to use their voice for to be heard. My name is Jeremy Chapman, and I'm the host of this podcast. Joining me on today's episode is Suzanne Brydon. Suzanne is a life coach, business coach, and mentor with over 20 years' experience in her field. She also hosts the podcast, Is That What You Think? On this episode, Suzanne discusses her podcast, the benefits she's had from it, how it can complement your business, and how it can show your personality off as well. We also discuss Suzanne's life coaching and mentoring, and how to find the right life coach for you. Suzanne, lovely to have you here today on the Your Voice Here podcast. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, looking forward to our conversation.
Your podcast, Is That What You Think? I've had a listen to it, but for the benefit of all the listeners listening to this podcast, would you mind telling them what it's all about?
Yeah, sure. So my podcast, Is That What You Think, is really a conversation between me and my guest. We have some fun questions, so I'll ask them random things about what's their favourite sandwich, what's the best piece of advice someone's given them, finding out a bit more about themselves, their family, their background, but also about their career or a particular job that they may have done that may be of interest to the people that listen to my podcast. If they want to get into the same industry or profession, it's a good base to start. So finding out from somebody that's already been there and done that. But as a coach, I'll also throw in some coaching questions to really pick their brains and find out what motivates them, what makes them think in a particular way, what they think about particular subjects that I might deal with some of my life coaching clients. To try and really understand how their brain's wired and what their perspective is on the world.
No, that's brilliant. I think often it's so hard to try and teach someone by showing them instructions or lecturing them, but actually having people there with first-hand experience is a really a good narrator to take advice from, I think. And obviously then putting some coaching in there as well, the listeners are getting a great benefit to listening to your podcast. What kind of guests have you had on so far?
So far I've had a hypnotherapist, I've had a style and colour analysis, and I've also got people such as social media managers, photographers, web designers. I'm also going to have some more kind of weird and wonderful jobs coming up later on in this year, so I won't give too much away about that one because they're quite exciting ones to have on. But it's really just trying to get a broad range of careers just to give as much experience to everybody.
That is a really lovely broad mix, and it's very exciting to hear that there's some other kinds of careers and there's a fair bit of diversity there with the kinds of jobs or careers that you're having on and the kind of guests you're having on. What was it that made you start your podcast? What was it that you wanted to get out of it?
Well, I listen to so many different podcasts and they're all so varied and hosted by such different people, from celebrities to particular experts on subjects that I'm interested in. And it just got me thinking that if I'm really interested in that broad spectrum, then the people that I'm talking to, my clients, they'd probably be interested to listen to that type of podcast. So one that's a little bit informative, one that kind of opens up kind of behind the scenes as to particular jobs and careers that we might think about. But also I wouldn't say I'm nosy, I would say I'm interested in people and their behaviour. So I have a degree in communications, verbal and non-verbal, and all things media related as well.
Wow.
And so I've always been fascinated by people and what makes them communicate in the way that they do. So I just thought I'd give it a try, see what happens. And so far the response I've had has been really good.
I think that's the key, isn't it? Is to be interested rather than interesting. But it's getting that balance, because as a podcast host, you need to still be interesting to get your guests and your listeners interested. But it's
Yeah,
ensuring that
absolutely.
it's ensuring you're respecting your guest enough to be interested in them, because at the end of the day, it's about them. And obviously, I think nosy is the wrong word. Yeah, inquisitive. I think a thirst for knowledge is always a better way to look at it. And I've listened to a couple of your episodes, and you do the conversations where. So this is the thing. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to expect when I listened to the podcast, because I know you're a life coach and a business coach and mentor. And I thought, is that what it's going to be about? But it sort of is, but isn't. You do take a really lovely, genuine look at each guest and get the best out of them. I mean, I'd recommend anyone to download and take a listen to it, because it's a fabulous podcast. And what I love as well is that you can have anyone on, really, in terms of a guest. As long as they're, I suppose, I've got something that they can talk about that can be relatable to the podcast. You're not limited to what guests you have on. I mean, for me, I only have on radio presenters, podcasters, or anyone using their voice to be heard. Whereas it was a bit more broad. And as I say, so going from hypnotherapists to style consultants is a real difference. But again, they all dovetail in beautifully because of the structure of the podcast. Now, you've got this inquisitive brain. You love chatting to people. How have you found? You've said it's all been positive so far, but I mean, how have you found it in general? Has it benefited your business with having a podcast? Has that raised awareness? I mean, was that what you started it for as well, to help raise a bit of awareness to your business?
I think partly it was, yes. So I think with the profession that I'm in, I have a very close relationship with my clients, and some clients want to talk to me about really quite personal, emotional, almost intimate situations, scenarios, things that they've got going on, and they have to be able to build a relationship with me and build that trust. And in order for me to really help them and for them to have lifelong benefits, they have to really understand that I am truly all about helping them to succeed and having that really good rapport with them. And it's very difficult for some people to find out about me, for example, via my website or my Instagram. They don't get to maybe hear what I sound like, know how I ask questions, whether I sound friendly to them, or whether they actually think they can have a relationship with me. So by listening to me talking to somebody else, I think gives them a bit of an insight as to what the conversation with them might look like and feel like. And it's helping them to find out a little bit more about me before they then maybe take that step to maybe contacting me or paying me for a session. We always like to know what we're going to get before we hand over money for something. And when I'm dealing with somebody's issues, problems, or if they're, for example, a business coaching client, again, it's their business. It's what's most important to them. And they have to know that I am totally kind of behind what they're doing and fully supportive of that. And I will do whatever I can to help them break through all the challenges that they might be facing. So I guess it was a way to not necessarily advertise my business, but for people to find out more information about me. Yeah.
So, I mean, I remember when websites first came about and businesses were encouraged to have their websites. And one of the things we were always told was, you can add personality to your business with a website. And then came social media, and that was the same thing that they rehashed up with that. It gives you a chance to offer personality to your business. But no one ever tends to use their website or social media for a very personal way to talk to their client base. Whereas a podcast is a really lovely, quite intimate way, really, to talk to your client base, because if you're listening to it, you're thinking that you're just talking to them. And it shows off those lovely personal sides of things. And again, like you've just touched on as well, is people like to know what they're getting for their money. And as someone that offers a service as well, that's quite hard to sort of quantify what he does for money. The best way really is to then just go, well, this is what I do. Have a listen to this. And, this is what you're going to get from it. Because there is, when you first take that step of getting self-help, of self-awareness, of taking the help that you need, it can be rather daunting. No matter what, and this again, I'm just speaking from personal experience, no matter what I was going to, whether it was, I've done a little bit of stand-up comedy, so I remember going to a comedy course for the first time. and being just so nervous and deliberately being late because I didn't want to turn up too early and just feel a bit singled out or anything. It sounds stupid, but if I'd have known what it was about, if I could have just seen behind the doors before I got there, I would have been more inclined and more comfortable to get in. So I think it's a very clever thing you're doing with your podcast. And that's what people should be using their podcast for, is because, at the end of the day, your voice is what drives your business. And you are the driving force of your business. So showing who you are as a person, and as the old adage goes, people buy from people, then it's a great way to show off you as a person. And I always firmly believe that. So I mean, you mentioned you're a life coach, business coach, mentor. I'm really relieved that you don't have like a one size fits all attitude, where there often can be. Is that someone might have picked something up in off a website or somewhere like that, and suddenly they think they're an expert and they just apply that one size fits all to every client. Mm-hmm. From what I can gather, what you're saying, having listened to your podcast, you offer a very bespoke experience to people, because obviously, like you touched on, some people are coming to you with their business issues or troubles and tribulations of their work life. Other people are coming to you with their personal life side of things. So it's understanding which part of your brain you're using in terms of, well, I've got to be a bit more compassionate, or I need to be a bit more personal, or so it's what you have is a very multifaceted tool that you're using so beautifully.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I definitely say that everything I do is bespoke. I tailor everything that I do for that individual, and whether it be for their personal life or for their business, because you're not going to get two people that are the same. You might have particular tools and strategies that you can maybe give to a few different people, but the way that they use them or interpret them is going to be very differently. And the way you speak to somebody in one session is going to be different to how you speak to another person in a different session. So it's being able to understand how their brain works, how they're led by their emotions and their thoughts, and then tailoring what I have and what I've learned, and the skills that I've got to tweak that in a way that makes it most beneficial for that person that's sat in front of me. So for them to get the most out of me and what I can do for them, to enable them to be the best and do the best that they can.
Yeah, that's brilliant advice. I think that's the best way, is that like everything, everyone just wants a miracle cure. They want others to do it for them. And I think that's the sign of a good coach, is to helping people identify that they have all the power there available to them to solve their own problems. But what you're doing is helping them identify that, helping those powers come to the surface and help make sense of things. I always find that having been through various sort of different things, whether it was mental health issues or just struggling with work, it can all just turn into like a big pile of knotted wires. I always found that the one, just as much as I did one knot, I'd notice three more, and it's just trying to help make sense of it. And that's certainly, from what I can gather, is what you are doing as well, is helping people. Just, isn't it often the best way is just to hear yourself say it as well, is to get your problems out from in your head and actually vocalize them. And so letting someone else hear them is one thing, but actually letting your own brain hear it as well is sometimes the path to helping solve that puzzle as well.
Absolutely. And it's all about giving somebody the time and space that they need in order to vocalize everything. And like you've just explained there, when you either put things down on paper or when you actually say things, sometimes that's when you start thinking differently about them, or you start seeing them from a slightly different perspective, and having somebody else listen to that or see what you've written. For example, a coach, they can then hear what you're saying, and I might pick up that somebody's used a certain word many, many times over, and they've not realized they've said that. So you can then pick up on that and ask them to maybe explain that particular word or why they feel that they're using it. And there's particular tools and coaching questions that I asked, really to try and unpick somebody's thoughts, to just keep breaking things down into smaller and smaller pieces. And because quite often there's not just one thing. They might think that there's one large issue that they have to solve, but through conversation, it's usually that there's a few other little things along the way, and dealing with those enables us to deal with the bigger picture as well.
Oh yes, I mean, you mentioned that you're you've studied communication both. Excuse me. You've studied communication both. What were the words you said? Actually, I'm trying to think. You said it's both visual and not both verbal and non-verbal.
Yeah, that's correct.
So reading people and often people tell you so many things without even realizing it, just by trying to unknot all of their problems. So it's I suppose being a very good listener is one of the key skills you'd need.
Absolutely, it's one of the first things that you get taught when you do the degree, when you do the coaching qualifications, is that yes, in order to understand your client, you have to listen to them. It's fair enough having the right questions, but if you don't hear and listen to what they're saying, you're not then going to ask the right follow-up question. You're not going to be able to help them. And being able to look at somebody, they might be saying all the right things, but their body language might be telling you something completely different.
Yes.
And when you can home in on that and ask them certain questions about that, that's when you can really, really dig deep into something and then start working on finding the right strategy or the solution or the right action that they need to take.
Do you find that you can have someone that's telling you something, and as you just said, they're telling you one thing, but their body language is telling you another thing? Have you had it where you've pretty much, they feel like you've read their mind just by putting a bit of a thought out there to them? And you watch them. Do you get that at all, where people just suddenly almost look at you as if you're a sorcerer or something like that?
Yes, I call them kind of the light bulb moments.
Yeah.
It's when the client usually stops speaking, they completely relax into the chair that they're sitting in, and they then give you full eye contact and start smiling at you, because they then know that you're on the same page as them, that you are supporting them, but they've actually realised something, or they've figured something out themselves. So they feel much more confident. So they do start changing their body language. But sometimes, yeah, if I do comment on something that I've seen, not necessarily what I've heard from them, they will sometimes say, well, how do you know that? And then I'll obviously explain kind of the signs that they're displaying.
I just always remember at school, and certainly with my parents as well, they'd always have that ability to do that, read body language, and I'm thinking, how are they knowing I'm thinking that? It's really terrifying me. But I think, if as we were saying, is that people can often be reluctant to take the help they want, or can be cynical, I suppose, or perhaps, like you say, they're sitting in their chair with their arms crossed and they're all tense and thinking, I just want to get this over with. To really see them understanding it and taking the ideas that they've had presented to them, to own them as their own, and to think, actually, yeah, I can make some sense of this. Like you say, the light bulb moment is it's a very good analogy.
Yeah, and I think as well, a good communicator or a good coach, or even a good listener, I think when you're really effective is when you can make somebody feel relaxed without saying anything. So there's particular things that I do with some of my clients when we would call it reflecting and mirroring. So when you copy their body language and you can almost manipulate their body language to open up, to be more relaxed, to get into a more comfortable space by what I do, the client can then sort of subconsciously read my body language. And it's human nature to repeat and copy what other people do. And if you see somebody looking relaxed and acting relaxed, you naturally want to follow their path, especially if they're talking about something that you want to know more about. So there is a way that if I am sat with somebody who is tense, stressed, anxious, I can just sit with them, not necessarily be saying anything, but change my body language so they then start mirroring mine, which makes them calmer and more relaxed. And for them, they're going to get more out of the session if they're more relaxed and energized.
And obviously, it's not just the body language, the vocal, the verbal side of things as well. You have a very calming voice, if you don't mind me saying.
Thank you.
It's pacing, it's tone. It's just that reassuring of people, isn't it? I think, again, a calming voice has such a great effect on people as well. Just putting them at ease, taking patience and time to let them know I'm listening to you, I'm here to help. I always find that helps. I've done a little bit of coaching, whether it be football coaching, a little bit of business coaching. And I've always just learned that, you can't just have a one size fits all. I always used to call it frequencies, of just tuning yourself into their frequency, or tuning their frequency into yours. So you're both on the same wavelength and talking that same language almost, that they feel as if you're only talking personally to them.
Absolutely. Yeah, there are some of my business clients who I have a very different way of speaking with, because we have very short sessions, and some of them may be accountability sessions where they are short for a reason. So they might be a 30-minute quick fire, right, what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? And what's going to be the result of that? So I will speak quicker, shorter sentences. I'll use their technical jargon from their business, so they are totally understanding what's necessary. And it also shows that I'm on the same page as them, and that if I'm reflecting kind of the seriousness or the urgency of what they're dealing with, again, that's reassurance for them that I'm doing right by them. Whereas a life coaching client, it's not good to be talking fast and using technical language, because that's not going to help.
No. Now, we're mentioning life coaching and business mentoring coaching. I hope you don't mind, I'm going to ask, but I can often be a bit cynical about life coaches or business coaches. I've had 20 odd years in the motor trade, working with all kinds of different levels of business coaches that often the motor manufacturers would push our way to say, these guys are going to change your lives. And you think, this is just money for old rope. How do they know our circumstances? So I am a little cynical over life coaches. But however, what you've presented to me at the moment is showing that I'm not cynical anymore.
Good.
I would certainly use you, because you clearly listen, you adapt to different people. But that was really going to be the question I was going to ask, is what should people look for when they're looking for a life coach? What kind of things are there accredited life coaches? Are there certain accreditations? Like if I want someone to come around and fix my boiler, I usually look for, I think there's another name now, but it used to be Corgi approved or Corgi accredited boiler engineers. Are there life coaches and business coaches out there that have those accreditations? I mean, maybe I'm showing my ignorance here. Maybe there are, and it's all known about, but I'm just asking for my own personal.
I don't think it's that well known, but yes, I think if you want to approach a life coach, business coach, then it's always good to maybe do a little bit of research first. So you can have a look to see what their background is, what their qualifications are in. I'm qualified in coaching. I have quite a few different qualifications, so I'm lucky enough to be able to speak on numerous sort of expert topics, if you like. My degree backs that up as well. I'm accredited by the Coaching Academy. And there's particular licenses and insurances that we take out as professional accredited coaches. So we've basically put our money where our mouth is. Yeah. We've gone out to get all these qualifications, and then obviously the data protection, the different insurances and licenses that we hold. I think, in my opinion, it just reassures people that I know what I'm talking about. I'm willing to put my name out there for people to go and do their research on me. And also, yes, I have a website and social media. So I always say that you can internet stalk me so that you can see that I'm a real person with real qualifications, with real experiences. And I have corporate experiences, obviously, before I became a coach, in all different industries. And personally, I have had certain experiences as well. So I'm fortunate enough that I can interact and build those relationships with my clients, because professionally I'm true, and personally I am a real person. So I think that's what people need to look for is, do you trust this person? Have they gone through a particular training? And how do you feel about them as a person? It's always good to know whether you can have a relationship with that person.
Yeah, I think you've got to be comfortable with the advice that you're being given as well. So it's finding the right person that's going to help you, isn't it? I think it's we all like to think in life that everyone likes us or that everyone will warm to us, but there might always be those ones that might not. So it's finding the right one for you. But what you're saying there is obviously look for the ones that are transparent, that aren't hiding anything, that are literally saying, look, you can find out every bit of information about me, but watch out for the ones that are, have only maybe... I found that in lockdown, there seemed to be a massive rise in life coaches. I saw one called a Mojo Manager. There were lots of things just popping up because I think a lot of people were having a lot of self-discovery in lockdown. And I likened it to when my dad first got glasses. He'd never had glasses before. I was 13 years old, and I came home and he went, "Oh my good God, look at these! Look at teletext through these." And I went, "No, Dad, my eyesight's fine. I know what glasses do. It's okay." He went, No, you're not going to believe this. He thought he'd invented this thing. It's he thought he'd found the solution or the best thing since sliced bread. But I was like, well, no, a lot of people know about this, and I think that every day a lot of people make a lot of self-discovery. And that's what I'm saying is a lot of people will go have this self-discovery and go, "Oh my God, I'm a rocket scientist." And then tomorrow they'll go, "Oh my God, I've had a self-discovery. I'm now a vet." And then it's that constant thing. So again, consistency, I suppose, is the other thing that people should be looking for. And how long have you been doing it for, if you don't mind me asking?
So on and off, I've been coaching for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And mentoring for probably 15 years, I think. I had to get other qualifications to be able to do that, I think, to the standard I wanted to. I'm quite competitive and stubborn with myself. So if I want to do something, that's why I always say that I'll try and be the best that I possibly can. And sometimes that makes me work quite hard, but that's to prove to myself that I can do it. So I became a mentor because I just wanted to push myself that bit further as well.
And the most important bit I heard there was doing it for yourself, pushing yourself. And often we often do things for other people. We do it for recognition or adoration. But the most important things is to do it for yourself. And I always give this advice to podcasters. When you start a podcast, no matter what you're looking to do it for, make sure the main reason you're doing it is for yourself. Because it's that once a podcast is out there, it's always out there, and it's there. It's something to look back on and reflect on in a few years' time. Or we can often start something with very high expectation levels, and often I see people start a podcast and they'll think, my first episode, I'm going to get 10,000 downloads, and I'm going to be I'm going to be an overnight sensation. And it doesn't happen. So when that first episode goes out and it doesn't hit those high expectation levels, they come to the second episode and they're already looking at their podcast with resentment. They're already going, I don't want to do this anymore. It's just becoming a faff. It's becoming an effort. But if you're doing it for yourself, in the same way people have hobbies, whatever those hobbies are, whether it's something so small as trivial like stamp collecting to kite flying to being a pilot, whatever. We do those things for ourselves to reward ourselves, and that means then because it's a hobby and it's something we're doing for ourselves, we put a little bit more of care and attention into it than we would if we were doing it for someone else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's so true, because when I think about my own podcast, I genuinely look forward to the conversations with my guests, because I get to find out more about who they are, what they do, how they think about things, and why they look at the world in a particular way. And for example, it may be because of their parents or their jobs change them in a particular way, or something's happened to them that means they then interpret the world differently, for example, than I do. And I don't necessarily look at things like the stats that sit behind the podcast. I genuinely just think about what I'm going to learn from that person who I'm speaking to, and what maybe some quirky questions that I can ask them as well, just to kind of pick their brains that little bit more. So I genuinely look forward to them, and I just hope that everybody that listens to it as well feels the same way as well, that it's something to look forward to. It's something maybe soft to listen to. It's not too taxing. It's not too not too much thoughts involved. It's just a nice conversation to listen in on between two people. And hopefully if they learn something, or they see something from a different perspective, or it just gives them inspiration for their own career or something that they're going through in life, it just might help them think about an alternative viewpoint or a solution that they might not have come across. So yeah, so I genuinely see it as just a conversation that I want to have. That's kind of where I originated my podcast from, I guess.
Yeah, it's I've had a couple of others say similar things, because they've had an opportunity to interview people that they would never have had an opportunity to do if they hadn't have had a podcast. I've got people that have been invited to events and been to events they never probably would have thought they'd have gone to if they didn't have a podcast. It's those things that just suddenly, like I say, if you do it for yourself, if loads of people, as I say, they'll start either thinking they're going to get rich quick or have thousands and millions of downloads. But the moment you don't hit those high targets, you start just going, oh, I'm not looking forward to it. It becomes a bind. It becomes laborious. Whereas if you're doing it for yourself, you're like, oh wow, I'm going to be chatting to that person. And I'm much the same as you. I get really excited about every guest I get to talk to because I'm interested. I love learning about people, and I couldn't give a crap if anyone listens to it or not. I'm listening to it. I enjoy it. That's the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like with a lot of things. If you are personally interested, or you genuinely believe that there is a good reason for doing something, that's what's going to motivate you to do it, whether it be to do the podcast or anything in life, careers, whatever it might be. If you are personally interested, and you can actually see the benefit of doing something, that's what's going to keep you performing, motivated, kind of performing at your best. That, like you said, that curiosity, that will keep driving you forwards. If you don't have that, then yeah, as soon as you do see a day where there's been some low stats or whatever it might be, that could demoralize you. And then potentially, if you're not actually interested, then you could kind of say, well, I'm not going to do it again.
And there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of podcasts out there that have probably managed 1 or 2 episodes, and then they've just thought, this is too much hard work for the rewards I know I'm deserved, or I know I should have. And that's why, again, so doing it for yourself means, well, the key to getting a good podcast for me is always about consistency. So if you put your episodes out, and I'm great at preaching this and helping others doing it, but I'm terrible at taking my own advice. But if you say your episode is going to come out at a certain time of the week, etc., then you need to make sure it does come out at that time. Because people are, whilst everyone loves to think they're spontaneous, we are all really creatures of habit, and we love little routines. And so, if for example, my podcast comes out on a Wednesday, if the episode isn't there that week, someone's going to go, oh, well, what shall I do now? I'll look for another podcast. And then you lose that person, technically. So that's why, again, doing it for yourself helps improve things like your consistency. It takes away those silly self-imposed hurdles we put there. So, when I get 5,000 downloads, I'll do this. And it's like, well, how long is that going to take? Why not after my first month of putting out my episodes, I'm going to celebrate, or put things in there that are realistic. I think that's always the way to set. If you want to set yourself a target, the most important thing, do it for yourself. But then if you have to put other targets in, make sure they're realistic, not high expectation levels where you're just chasing your tail or ego often.
Yeah. If you don't set sort of realistic, achievable tasks or goals, and if you don't maybe break them down into smaller pieces, more manageable kind of bite-sized pieces, we say, then the first time that you struggle or you don't achieve something, some people will say, right, I've tried it, it's not working, I'm just going to stop. Whereas if you break it down into its smallest part and just go piece by piece, little step by little step, you will achieve more. And then that will again be your motivation to continue, because you then can see that you can do it.
Yes, yeah. Sometimes that's the best way, is to just do it, and just to prove to yourself you can see you've done it. Breaking it down into manageable chunks is so important, because otherwise, again, you can become so overwhelmed by the work involved. Or we've had a brief conversation on social media about to-do lists and time management, and I say I hate to-do lists, because I always find to-do lists, they never shrink, they constantly get longer, and people have a tendency to cherry pick. So they'll go, I'll do that, and that. What I tend to do is my to-do list for things I just want to achieve that day. Then I'll go through it and go, okay, well, actually, that doesn't necessarily need doing today and it's not that important, so I'll push that to tomorrow, or I'll put it on the back burner, so if I do get time that day, I can get that done as well. But I like to try and focus on the things that are stopping the creative flow in my day. So I'll get the thing that's stopping it all flowing out of the way first. And often that will be something that I'm putting off, or something that seems as if it's like a boring task or something. And the best thing is just to get that done, because then everything else tends to, it's like putting a dam in the river, basically. It's just everything starts backing up, and then you end up achieving nothing, and your to-do list just gets longer the next day.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some people who I've been talking to recently, and they use a to-do list or a task list or a spreadsheet, however they organise their tasks. But it's sussing out whether they want to do something like a quick win, something really short, something really easy that then fires them up for the rest of the day, or are they somebody, like you were saying, who gets the big piece out the way, the one that's been maybe keeping them awake at night, kind of making them feel a bit stressed, a bit anxious. Do you know what? Tomorrow morning, I'm just going to do it. Then it's out the way. I don't ever have to think about it again. So it's finding out what people kind of how they're motivated and how they run their day. But a to-do list is great if it's used, I would say, correctly. So that's putting times and dates on things, putting deadlines, looking through it to say, okay, well, what's going to help me achieve this? Is there anyone else that can help me? Mm-hmm. Can I delegate this to somebody at work or at home? Or do I need to do other things before I actually do what's written on my list? So something like we said about breaking things down to the smaller part. So again, it's all great to write it down and get it out of your head, but you're only going to achieve if you actually stick to it, set your time frames, and actually understand what's really involved.
Yeah, it's finding what works for you, I think, is the key thing, is finding that what works for you again. I mean, time management was always one of those things that I remember it was always used as a beating stick when I was in the sixth form at school, where the head of sixth form would always come and go, "That's poor time management. That's poor time management." And it probably took me until about 42 years of age to actually find time management that worked for me, that made me productive and efficient. Because I think at school it just seemed like it was just one way of doing it. In other words, have a spreadsheet, you write down your times, that's how long it's going to take you. And it just didn't seem fun to me. And also, I'm not a conventional person either. So the principle of doing 9 to 5 is just completely out the window with me. I quite like working still at 8, 9 o'clock in the evening, because sometimes work doesn't feel like work and it's fun. So again, finding what works for you, finding your peak periods, I find is always a good thing, is working out when you're at your peak, when you're at your when you've got highest levels of concentration, what do you need to do then at those points? So admin for me is always one of those things that can cause a real blockage in the flow again. So being kind to myself with admin, working out what day I'm good at admin, what day it flows, but again, working on yourself is the key thing, and understanding yourself. We spend so much time in our life wasting time working out how we can compete with other people, or beating the competition, whereas actually the best step you can take, and you can wax lyrical on this based on our conversation today, is understanding yourself and knowing that often it's beating yourself. We spend so long identifying our demons and going, I need to do something about those. But if I had a bad leg, I wouldn't go cutting my left leg off just because it was bad. I'd try and find ways to solve it. And I have found that often holding hands with those demons and embracing them just makes your life a little bit more peaceful. And when I say demons, I'm not meaning drugs and drink and things like that. I'm saying about demons like mine from when I was in the sixth form at school. And the head of sixth form used to literally use his beating stick with time management. That was one of my demons, but actually I managed to put that demon to bed, because I thought, well, actually, I'm not bad at time management. I've just not found the right way for me to do it. And that's the key thing.
Yeah, like you were saying about the kind of the last few years that we've all been through, I think especially with my clients who I think are feeling a little bit overwhelmed, especially in their business, and they just feel genuinely stuck. It's about taking them back to, well, why did you start originally? Because they're so consumed by images and opinions and social media and the internet and what other like for like businesses are doing, they start getting overwhelmed, they start getting stressed, they start comparing every minute detail, and it's helping them to stop comparing and to go back to, well, why did you start the business to begin with? What was your reason for starting? What was your purpose? What did you want to help your customers with? To getting them back to basics, to reconnect with what their real emotions are, what their true thoughts and values and beliefs are. So really kind of unpicking all that good stuff, and to help them to stop that sort of comparison and looking on social media and believing everything that they see. So yeah, it's a tricky situation, and sometimes when you do step out of your comfort zone and you just take that first kind of vulnerable step towards, okay, I'm going to change, something's going to happen to me, but I know it's for the best, and I know I'm going to come out bigger, better, brighter. I'm going to do it. I think that's just so empowering for people. Yeah, absolutely. I could chat for hours. I really could. This is such an insightful chat, and it's I'm fascinated as well. It's a topic that we've touched on in a few episodes previously. Of whilst we talk about podcasting, we also talk about the challenges that people come up against. We take quite an honest look at it, and this has been a really lovely, honest look at what you do, how you help people, and what your podcast is all about. If the listeners would like to get in touch, which I'm sure they will, and I would advise them to, what's the best way to keep in touch with you? So my website is suzannebrydon.co.uk, and I am usually found on Instagram at sbrydon coaching. That's where I tend to hang out most of the time on social media. But you can also email me, coaching@suzannebrydon.co.uk.
It's fabulous. Well, Suzanne, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming onto the Your Voice Here podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's no problem at all. It's been a joy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to my guests for joining me today here on the Your Voice Here podcast. If you'd like to find out more information about what we discussed on today's episode, along with finding out a bit more about our guest, then check out the show notes for more details. And of course, thank you to you, the listeners, for tuning in. It's greatly appreciated, and it's nice to know someone's actually listening to me. If you'd like to find out more about Your Voice Here, again, check out the show notes. If you'd like to get in touch, then you can email hello@yourvoicehere.co.uk. We'd love to hear from you. Now, before every interview, I try and warm up every guest by doing a quick fire question round. It acts as a nice way to get them laughing, warming up their vocal cords, and just to relax them a little bit. Give it a try if you're a podcaster. Free tip, there you go. I did think, though, what shall I do with all these quick-fire question rounds that don't really make it into the podcast? Well, why not just bolt it onto the end and see if listeners like it? I hope you enjoy it. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I look forward to you joining me next time. Take care. Now, what we're going to do is, as with every guest I have on the podcast, I like to just ask some quick-fire questions beforehand just to get you warmed up, and we're going to try and do this in under a minute. So are you ready?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. First question, dog or cat?
Dog.
Favourite film?
I don't know. There's too many.
I've yet to
I'll
have
say
anyone...
Maverick, because that's one of the last ones I've seen, which is really good.
Great choice. I've yet to have anyone literally give me an answer immediately on that one. It's always like, oh no, hang on. Oh.
There's too many.
One word that would describe you.
A trier.
If you had to have a tattoo of a famous person's face, who would it be and where would you have it?
A famous person. I'm going to have to say Daniel Craig as James Bond.
Nice.
And I would have it probably somewhere on my arm.
Nice choice. If you could travel back in time and do just one thing, what would it be?
The obvious one is probably get rid of COVID before it actually appeared. But I would probably have gone back in time and been a racing driver.
Oh, nice. Nice choice. Best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Don't stress the small stuff.
Jaffa cake. Is it a cake or biscuit?
Oh no, it's a cake.
But is it a biscuit? Like, it's hard to say. Like, it's. I think that's the eternal question of life. Favorite theme park in the world?
I'm scared of heights, so I haven't been to many. Alton Towers.
Brilliant. Favorite time of year?
Summer.
A good night in?
Red wine, good movie, and my husband sat next to me.
Sounds perfect. A good night out?
Singing and dancing with all my friends.
How would you like to be remembered?
Fun, loyal, and someone who always brought the glitter and sparkle.
Job done. Suzanne, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jeremy, cut it out.